I'm glad you guys had a chance to see the actual command center and have sort of a taste of what's going on. I'm going to present some information and particularly a video that I think will give you a better idea of what's happening and how some of these ideas might apply to your agency in the future.
Attention to the individual property. You're trespassing. Report there immediately.
When the communication center and police department gets an alert from Elite, they know that there's a crime in progress. They also know that their responding officers will be under the camera view of Elite and will safely guide them to the suspect at the call and stay with them until the call is complete. It's a terrific officer safety aspect for police with their dwindling resources now on responding, and it's also a terrific crime prevention tool.
The remote guarding solution, much like other AI and technology solutions, are coming into this business line to be more effective and more cost effective as well. The advancements that have been made from the infancy when it was what we call video verification, which was really someone just looking for motion on a camera, where we've now narrowed it down with the technology and are looking for very specific things like people in vehicles in places where they shouldn't be or longer than they should be there, and are able to actually proactively prevent the crime using the technology.
When you have thousands of deployed cameras, it's prohibitively costly and really impossible for humans to monitor them all. So instead, you use the AI to filter out all the noise so that the humans only have to interact with the true crimes in progress and don't have to be bogged down with all the noise.
You know, security guard really can be in one place at a time and is limited by what they can physically see and hear. Where our system is, encompassing the entire property, it's a more reliable solution.
A good remote guarding system, basically it starts off with a very careful forensic review of the property you're trying to secure. You have to have a lot in your technology stack to monitor the performance of the cameras, to make sure they're all pointed in the right place, to make sure that they're operating, to making sure that you use strong security protocols to protect your cameras and your systems, because of course these are all IoT devices, they're all connected to the internet, and therefore they're vulnerable to attack. So the last thing you want to have happen as a security company is have your infrastructure being used by criminals against your clients.
So Elite is working hand in hand with law enforcement. We're constantly interacting at Elite with the law enforcement agencies around the country to ensure that everybody's on the same page.
So I thought that video was a good overview of what we were talking about downstairs, but when you see it, makes it clear, So these are the pillars of Elite and what makes it different than other companies. And I think, anyone who's thinking about integrating cameras and AI and real-time detection and crime prevention, including, let's say, I'm interested in making sure there aren't street takeovers or, what have you. These are the pillars of what you need, and you need to combine all these things. So, for example, anyone can sell cameras. Anyone can, give you the best camera, fine. But do they know how to actually place it? Have they the experience like our operators do of having to actually, for years, respond to alerts and deal, and then they get a whole level of additional insight about where really cameras are most effective, how they should be deployed. So, for example, the PTZ cameras, very popular because they're great. You can move around and all that stuff. A lot of agencies invest very heavily in PTZ, but it turns out that for your remote guarding, PTZ is not good. Why? Because if they're moved off target, then your AI is suddenly going to struggle because now it's being given a new environment that it doesn't understand what's anomalous and what's regular. So we do have PTZ cameras, but we use them to supplement the remote guards, which are all fixed cameras, and the system constantly use a variety of technology to monitor at all times the health of the camera. The camera's pointed the right direction, hasn't been misadjusted, hit by something and pushed off target. So, and that happens every second. It's always checking its health. We're constantly checking the health of all the cameras, and in many cases can do any kind of maintenance remotely without having to actually go out and just keeps costs down quite a bit, of course. So the imagery tech, equipment agnostic. So this is something we were talking about a little bit in the coffee room, is that it doesn't matter what kind of cameras you have, we can add the intelligence. As long as the cameras have a certain level of quality of image, we can add the intelligence to those cameras. So we don't really care which cameras, as long as they have a sufficient level of quality, we can add the intelligence and so on. And that's, I think, the way you should think too. You should think of it that way. We were talking earlier about the Caltrans cameras. Those cameras were never designed to be LPR cameras. Those cameras were just to monitor how much traffic. And we're talking to the officers from PHP, and guess what? They've added intelligence to those Caltrans cameras, and now they can read license plates. So like that sort of thing. You don't need to buy an LPR camera to do LPR. You have a good camera, you add the intelligence. Now it's like a person. It can read, it can recognize license plate and read the license plate. So that's what equipment agnosticism is really important, I think. And then we deal with the stack of technologies that we use to ensure that the cameras are not missing events, that they're healthy, that they're secure. A lot of security vendors have been burned because their tools have been misused by the enemy. There was a case in Washington, D.C. They have tons of cameras in Washington, D.C. Some Romanian hackers hacked those cameras and took them over right before Trump's first inauguration. It was a very embarrassing thing. Don't want that to happen. So we use really, really robust security tools to make sure. Most integrators and installers don't pay attention to that. In fact, they leave the default passwords because they're worried. But if I have to do customer support and I change the password, then maybe we won't remember what the password is and we won't be able to service the camera. We use very, very powerful security tools such that the administrative passwords have to be generated at the time you want to use them, only work for when you want to use them. Then as soon as you use them, that password no longer works again. You have to check out from our domain controller, in essence, a new password next time you want to. You see what I'm saying? So really, most people don't do that. They don't really think about the implications of hackers hacking default passwords, which there are lists of those online. The SOCC personnel, Elite spends a lot of time training the personnel in the command center. We, as a law enforcement advisory board, are constantly doing quality control. Because I've told Arya, my goal is to be proud of every single call to law enforcement from the command center. And if I can't be proud of every single call, then we need to work on that quality. And so that's our goal. Because the bottom line is, if that final event, that call to law enforcement is goofed up, then we fail. So, and then finally, our interaction with law enforcement, which I'm going to show you a little bit more of as we go. So sort of the life cycle, the crime prevention cycle, we talk about all these things. The processing alerts is the big part with the AI and all that stuff to make sure that that's all done properly. Then the operator responds, and if we have to, and it's very rare, most of the time we don't call police, as I'll show you. We call the police, want to make sure we have good experience with that, and then we debrief. Okay, so here's really, I love this slide because we've been talking about this for a while, and then I saw this data put together this way, and this really captures the thrust of what I'm trying to communicate to you. Is we can take 126 million hours of video surveillance and boil that down to only 58,000 hours where a human has to interact with that video. So that's the secret sauce. Is 126 million hours, funnel down. You can see that ratio, 2,153 to 1. So out of every 2,153 hours of video that's recorded, our operators only need to interact with 1 hour. That's the key, because otherwise it's just way too much noise. There's way too much noise. You can't do anything. You need 1,000 people to monitor all your cameras. It'd be ridiculous. Okay, so we handled the 2024 78,000 incidents. So these are real events. These are like, the homeless guy that climbs the gate and comes into your property, or that's sleeping, on your private property, and like goes into checking doors to find a door of a car to go in and sleep, or whatever it is. 78,000 events like that. We only need to call police 1,900 times. So what we're trying to do, which I hope it's very helpful to law enforcement, is reduce your nuisance calls, because these are in essence nuisance. We don't need to call you, and we can resolve it on our own. these would be what you would think are nuisance calls where you just have to go and say, hey, move along, get out of here. So we're trying to reduce those nuisance calls, and I think that really is a huge benefit to law enforcement. And the other thing is when we do call police, it turns out that over half the time, the law enforcement officers who respond make an arrest or detain for people involved. So we really are proud of that number. So we're not having you come out for no reason. When you're getting there, you're doing. And then the final thing is there are no false alarms to law enforcement. So we're getting that's part of that filtering process, right? So that we're not going to call you if it turns out that there's no substantial reason to call you. So if we call, it's because there's a substantial reason to call on. Here's some other numbers and metrics that I think are really important. So over the 6 years, we've had more and more volume, and we've been able to handle that. Again, the average response time between when the camera alerts and a human is looking at the video feed is 7 seconds. By the way, we're working, and it's on the roadmap for 2025. We are going to have AI be able to handle during that 7 seconds. Already now, our AI is good enough that it's going to be able to start talking to the offender and saying, "Hey, get out of it." But it won't sound like a robot. It'll sound, it's like a Turing test, right? For AI, the person who's being talked to won't be able to tell it's a human or a robot because it's going to be very personalized, and the voice inflection of the robot will match like a human with escalating degrees of hey, oh hey, the dealership's closed, please run along, you in the white shirt, come back tomorrow when we're open. Hey, I told you to leave, like that. Now the robot can do that. So in that 7 seconds, we're already going to be engaging, and then it will seamlessly hand off to the human operator and take it from there. We have clients in 15 states, and Noel mentioned also internationally in London. Over $1 trillion in assets are being protected by Elite right now. This graphic is really interesting and it's new, and it shows you the velocity of calls over time, and you can see going from about 4,500,000 events to now over 7 million events in 4 years is interesting. The number of times we've had to voice down people has likewise gone up, and the number of arrests has gone up quite a bit as well. So this shows over time, our numbers are sort of matching up what you're seeing, which is, crime's up. Crime is definitely up, and we're seeing that with these numbers as well. I wrote an article about crime being up because, let's face it, most crimes aren't reported. So typically crime statistics can be unreliable, but things like this are pretty reliable because this is what's actually happening. Okay, so this is a great video. There's no sound. I'll talk over it a little bit. But the key thing, what I realized immediately when I was working with the lead, even in early days, about 12 years ago, is that it's a tremendous officer safety tool because if the dispatcher doesn't hang up on us, which they shouldn't, we can provide live updates and information to the responding officers. And in some cases, it's like, yeah, the guy's got a crowbar in his hand, or he's got it, or we had one guy in a parking garage with a rifle and a bandana over his back. You'd want to know where that guy, what that parking structure thing. There's somewhere in this parking structure, there's a guy with a rifle. It was more, we could vector them in like an air traffic controller to the fire to tell you exactly where the guy is. So this video shows a bit of that. You'll notice they actually walk past the car with the suspect. They're looking, and this must have been some little bit of miscommunication, but then our operator corrects them and they go right to the suspect. So this is an example of that in action. This is LAPD, it's a local car line belonging to Trophy Motors. See, they're just about there. They just nip it barely, and they're like, oh, she's not here. And then the call, now the dispatcher is being told, hey, they passed the car, it's this other one to go back, and then they go right to the suspect. So you can see that would be very helpful for officer safety. And then pull the suspect out of the car. This one is from, this will show you how even in a residential complex it can work. This is either a car theft in progress or a burglary from motor vehicle in process. And you'll see the police cars go right to the suspect in the victim's vehicle. The guy climbed, you see the fence over where the lights are? This bad guy started off there, was picked up by the cameras on that fence and then followed, and then they changed to this camera to get a better view, and were able to direct the officers that were responding right to the guy. And he ignored the voice out and everything, and just went on with his business and committing his crime. So right to the right, which obviously enhances your safety quite a bit versus when I was on patrol. You know, you have to walk around trying to figure out where the car, where the suspect. They just go right to them. They have the benefit of cover from their cars. You guys have a list of facilities. You know, that's a really great question. Whether or not our list of protected emergency public, but I'm sure that we can get the answer for you.
Hold on, yeah, we do have that.
We do have, so we do have a list.
If you want it, you can contact myself, you know, any one of us here. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Facility, and it's great when you contact you back to back. Yeah. We can do that. It's easy to keep on. So I call afterwards.
Yeah, that's great. So that's what a lot of the day shift is doing. The day shift is doing a lot of that, just getting calls from law enforcement and providing video footage. So yeah, I mean, I think it would be great if I mean, in a perfect world, you know, you would know, hey, let's call Elite and have them start looking to see if they see their car passing by or, you know, whatever. So one thing I wanted to mention about what's on the roadmap, because and I talked a little bit about this during coffee this morning, is it's like super exciting where AI and technology is going for crime prevention. So for example, the behavior, it's on our roadmap for very soon to be able to get really particular behavior programmed into cameras as the customers may want. So for example, you know, let's say you're covering a park and you can distinguish between, you can get an alert where like, oh, there's this one person who's in the park, and then everyone walks up to that person, walks away, walks up to that person, you know, indicating prostitution or drug dealing, whatever. Like we have behavior like that. We have behavior like we can determine the difference between someone going, let's say it's a parking lot, going to their car because it's their car, getting in the car, driving away, versus a burglar going to the car, and their behavior is different. And we could alert on the potential burglary suspect and not be bothered with the noise of alerting on every single person who goes to a car. That would be stupid and overwhelming. So like we can get to that level. Another thing we're talking with Max about, really interesting in their you know, Rodeo Drive and so on, for 211 suspects. Like the car is circling the block again and again. We can have alerts on behavior like that. Hey, if the car passes it circles the block more than twice, send an alert. Population counts, super easy for us to do. So like, for example, you're worried about street takeover, and the cameras can detect if a crowd is gathered very easily. Yeah, reckless driving behavior.
That's how the driving movie get.
Yeah, so just you name it, and then where it's going, because they're already doing this in the context of cybersecurity with their security information event monitors, where in the past, if there's a new virus or a new attack, you'd have to write a new rule for your console to detect that. Now you can say to your console, hey, Microsoft just came out with this new advisory about a virus. Please check for that behavior in our network. Just a human, just talking like in English, and then it will generate alerts for that behavior. So that's also on the roadmap for things to come, is that you'll be able to do things like that. You know, let's say you're looking for someone with a red hat. Hey, give me an alert on anyone wearing a red hat. that is coming. So that sort of behavior, I mean, it's just amazing, and it's benefits to law enforcement really can't be overstated. Finally, there's the all of these platforms. You see the exact view, the sure, there's all these different vendors you have to use and weave them all together with your AI, right? So the next thing that Elite is working on is called Singularity. And Singularity will be one application that does all of this, the AI, the video management system, all that in Singularity. And we can deploy to your cell phone the Singularity app so that you could have live camera feeds for whatever cameras you need in real time. Or we can send you, if it's one of our private clients, and Officer Smith needs it, boom, their Singularity app, and they get the live feed from the camera. Like that's like imminent, that level of technology, and it's an app that's in the App Store for Apple and the Google, the Droid Store as well. So you just be able to download a standard app, and then you just get the credentials you need. We do use individual credentials for each person. That way we can, because everything that's being done is being logged for security reasons. So we know who is accessing any particular camera at any time and what they looked at. And so every officer, for example, or every customer, they have a unique ID, credential, and so we know and what they're looking at, and we can provide all that stuff. So, that is also very imminent and coming as well. So, if you guys have any questions?
How are the cameras on the properties?
So that's a great question. Typically, we power them from the power company. Typically, we hook into power. However, we also have the capability to have solar powered standalone devices that are on our own towers that have solar with battery backup and their own cellular modems for data. And then we can go, so we could put them on a trail in the middle of a forest or something like that. And we've had interest in that from agencies that have problems with more less developed areas where they don't have power. So we can do that as well.
You guys only do cameras, type of like enforcement, type of security officer.
No, we strictly do the cameras and the command center. That's what we do. Yes, but in the case of, for example, the homes of whether it's a U.S. senator, or like the CEO of a hedge fund, and people like that, then we would work with their security teams. And as we said, we wouldn't call the police; we would call the security team first and coordinate with that. So, like, to me, it's an amazing benefit because you don't want to have your own. Like, if you think about the DA's command center, we have a DA investigator 24/7 in there, and you can watch cameras, right? But he's also getting search warrants, finding judges to sign search warrants in the middle of the night, finding DAs to review search warrants in the middle of the night, calling the officer involved shooting rollout team, fielding calls. He's not, it's not, doesn't make sense to have someone like that tasked with monitoring cameras, right? So we have the command center, and then they can call whoever you want them to call at this committee and provide that level of safety to your security team, where they don't have to be exposed. They can be within the inner perimeter that they're out. It's a great question.
If there's a power outage, is there a backup? Like if it goes out, we'll say residential.
Sure, they have battery backups.
Okay, there are battery.
Yeah, batteries. You put a UPS. So this building has these gigantic diesel, but they can power for 3 months. Even if there's no power in LA for 3 months, we're fine here. But we do at all those workstations, everything here has battery backups. Our cameras can be installed with battery backups, and they don't use a lot of energy. And one of the things that's amazing is I think it's called Halo, an Israeli company that makes an AI chip expressly designed for video surveillance AI. And the reason we like that chip versus the NVIDIA H110 is you guys have all heard, I'm sure, that these AI centers take a tremendous amount of electricity. Well, that's bad because they get hot and you cool them with liquid cooling. Well, this Israeli chip takes far less electricity and it's air cooled. It doesn't get hot. So you can install them at sites and they use a very little amount of energy. So the battery backup was fine. The still have that support. So
So you said earlier, power, not Wi-Fi, correct, by actually hooking up to a grid.
It-
So what we're seeing now is,
the Wi-Fi jammers.
yeah, in over the weekend, about, hey, I video your time at 5 o'clock. And we're going at 8, I think, that our cameras about leaving, but what we don't see it or,
Yeah, I don't believe we use Wi-Fi for that.
so the jammer won't,
We don't use
we're not using Wi-Fi.
we don't use Wi-Fi.
It's
Yeah.
that obvious issue with the Wi-Fi. It's
Jam.
jamming.
It's trivially easy to jam.
Where people are doing it, jamming the Wi-Fi, and turn on. Right.
So
So we're not.
so most of our fixed installations are wired.
Okay.
They're wired.
So it sets you apart, like, hey, I'm going.
Oh, like a Ring camera or something or Nest. Those are all Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi. You don't need a specific jammer to jam Wi-Fi. I used to do this in you've been to some of my technology classes. I can jam Wi-Fi with my laptop computer. Trivially easy to do. So you don't even need it purposeful. And the reason why is the 802.11 protocol has a deauthentication command that you can send. You don't need to be authenticated with that. So that means anyone within range of your radio can send deauth commands and basically turn off the signal to the device or to the access point. It's super easy and it's something that's a flaw in the protocol, but we do not use Wi-Fi. A cellular modem, then you have to talk. If we use those for remote, like the solar powered remote where we don't have the ability to wire, it's harder. It's doable, but it's harder to jam stuff. You need a specific. You need to overwhelm the power of. You need to actually have a jammer that jams that just overwhelms the signal with noise, and that's how you jam. Like they talked about using those in prisons and things like that. But most criminals would have. Criminals can easily have Wi-Fi jammers. It's harder for them to get accelerated. And you have to be very close because of the amount of power you need to overwhelm. The farther you are from the emitters, you really need a lot of power, so they'd have to be right on top of the emitter to jam. So that answers that question. Any other questions? I think we're ready for lunch. Anytime we have a ready.
One more question.
Yes. Yes, we can have audio. On most installations, we have one-way audio where we have a speaker, not for privacy reasons, but we can easily add microphone and have two-way audio. And that's that. And in fact, part of the AI thing is we can detect fire, we can detect gunshots, we can detect screeching brakes, like all that stuff is on the roadmap for being able to alert on things like behavior, like sounds that are of interest. Maybe someone yelling help, for example, or something like that. Good. All right. That's all I've got for now. Anything, Robert? Anything else? Scott, anything?
You mentioned the health monitoring.
Yes, I did. So I did mention at the beginning that health monitoring is definitely, so the worst thing that happens is, there's an event and you didn't know the camera was not working. That can't happen with us. As soon as a camera malfunctions, we immediately know. So the cameras are constantly checking in and reporting on their health, which includes not just being on, but also being pointed correctly, getting the appropriate signal, and communicating appropriately and so on. So that's always being monitored. The health, that's a big factor. And in many cases, if it reports a problem, we can power cycle the camera, reset it, and do things like that remotely, so the customer never has to have someone go actually physically interact with the camera.